Welcome to the Major Ed Pulido Warrior for Freedom podcast. Brought to you by Scars and Stripes Coffee.
He is a senior VP of the Folds of Honor Foundation and is a founding member of Warriors for Freedom Foundation and founded Warrior Nation. Ladies and gentlemen, Major Ed Pulido.
The Major Ed Pulido Warrior for Freedom podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to episode 2 of the Ed Pulido Warrior for Freedom podcast. My name is Kyle Golding. I'm your co-host, but this is the man himself, the Warrior for Freedom, Ed Pulido, Major Ed Pulido, U.S. Army retired. How are you today, Ed?
Man, I am doing outstanding. What a great day to be an American.
There
Kyle.
it is.
We're rolling, baby. Yeah. Come on.
I love it when he does
Hey,
that.
actually coming in hot.
There it is.
Just got in, and guess what? You know what? I wanted to see you, and I'm glad that you gave me the opportunity. I spent actually, just to start off the show, spent a incredible day yesterday in Hoover, Alabama.
Okay.
And in Hoover, Alabama, of course, is just a neighboring city of Birmingham. LSU and Alabama getting ready to tackle it out.
Oh, that's a big
cool
one.
Story is
Sure.
President Trump's coming in hot.
Oh, yeah.
And they've got all the Secret Service everywhere and everything that's happening around the fact that, you know, they're waiting for his visit. And you know what the cool thing about it is everybody down there was real pleasant about it. They were like, you know, this is going to be a great thing. It's college game day. And the reason I bring that up is because Veterans Weekend is upon us, and it's so important. And, man, what about the icing on the cake on this ordeal and making sure that this weekend's a very powerful weekend, 2 undefeated teams. The president's going to go down there.
All the attention is right there, right?
That's right. And I just think, you know what, for college football and for the political strife that's going on in our country, that maybe a little bit of just love and connection and just getting away from the politics of everyday life and just doing something that every American does is what it's all about.
That's what sports is supposed to do for us, right? Is we spend a couple hours, with our team, and we cheer for our team, and we're against the other guys. But then when it's over, we shake hands, right? We wish everyone well, and then we're happy that it happened, right? That's a good thing.
Well, and you know what? To all the listeners out there, it's honorable.
Yeah.
It builds character,
right.
Sportsmanship. And I think we can learn a lot from sport. Now, of course, sport also has a little bit of, it's grind and everything.
Sure.
And sometimes there'll be a little bit of conflict and people will get mad at each other. But at the end of the day, have you noticed that everybody, even if after a grueling boxing match, they come together in the ring and they hug at the end?
Right. Well, one of my favorite things ever is the Army-Navy game.
Yes.
Because the amazing, obviously the pageantry and everything come with it, but those guys literally are right up until they hike the ball. We're all on the same side. Kickoff happens. Those guys are trying to get at each other for the whole time. And the second that last whistle blows, they all come together. They sing the song, the fight song. They're working with their crowds. They got the national anthem happening, and those guys are back onto the same team. That's an amazing thing.
Well, and that's a powerful statement because I think in America we get caught up on the winners and the losers.
Right.
But at the end, you know what? There's got to be a winner. There has to be a loser.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that they can't come together and shake hands and say, you know what? We fought it to our best.
Right.
And we did our best. And we did what we felt we needed to do to win. And we just came up short. But guess what? We'll do it next year.
There you go.
That's powerful.
That's a microcosm of America, right?
It is. And you know what? In the marketing space and what you do, every day there's winners and losers. I mean,
Sure.
Somebody goes along with one company over another, and in corporate America it happens. In the nonprofit sector, it happens each and every day when someone's selecting an organization to give to. And on this Veterans Day weekend, I'd like to encourage just people, you know what? You don't have to give to Folds of Honor or my friends at Warriors for Freedom. If you want to give to another organization that's worthy of your dollar, that you invest in our veterans, because I think what we've done and what we've said is that, you know what, honoring the sacrifices and supporting the legacy is very, very important. What I mean by honoring the sacrifice, well, you honor the sacrifice in the service of that service member.
For sure.
But then you support their loved ones with providing support to the legacy.
Because that individual who's in the service isn't the only one serving, right? The
Correct.
family is always affected too.
Well, and I think I told you that story, so just kind of for the listener, just to recap, because this is a kind of important weekend for me. And I'm going in hot to Arizona tomorrow. But the thing about it is that, one of the things that happened to me is when my mom and dad got together, and my mom was the one that was actually the caretaker at home. My father was a Vietnam era veteran, deployed everywhere, all over the world. And the thing that was most inspirational was the fact that, my mom had to take care of the home front. And that to me showed me that, Veterans Weekend is about the veteran, past, present, and future.
Sure.
Memorial Day is about the families and the sacrifice they made or that loved one has made for all of us to be
the
free.
ultimate sacrifice.
That's right. That's right.
Because of course, what they say, right? All have some have given all, but some gave all. Right?
That's right, and that's about. And on Memorial Day weekend, that's how it is. And so we honor our military families by letting them know, hey, listen, we're here to support you, not with just an educational scholarship, but maybe the fact that we can connect you with an employment opportunity, or we can connect you with donors that are going to support you. Right. And, at Folds of Honor, we've done some very, very unique things in that area. But, again, going back to the Veterans Day weekend, and this is one of the topics of conversation, we're sitting here in the Scars and Stripes coffees here. They're going to be on Fox and Friends on Sunday, launching Scars and Stripes Coffee. Yes. It's getting ready to go viral, man. I'm part of a little company that I'm the philanthropy ambassador for them, where I've told them, listen, before you invest money in any of these charitable causes, you got to make sure that you understand what those charitable causes are doing. And
for sure.
That, to me, is what they taught us at United Way when we were there. And so I think the most important thing is for all the listeners out there, look up Scars and Stripes Coffee. It's about a percentage of the sale of the coffee going to the person that sells it, which is usually a veteran. This is a way to employ these veterans. And this is just our way of, launching something amongst other things that will support and provide healing and opportunity for veterans to thrive and be successful in America.
Let me ask you something about this, something that I learned when I met the guys from Stars and Stripes Coffee, that a lot of military guys, obviously when you're in the military, you are very tight with everyone in your unit, everyone you're serving with. It's the old adage, right? You're in a foxhole together, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So the guys you serve with become part of your family. One of the things that affects service members when they leave is that lack of camaraderie, right? That connection that they've had with all the guys that were in their squad, their platoon, et cetera, right? One of the things that Scars and Stripes is doing, not just giving guys a chance to, earn money and earn a living and have career advancement, but having that connection back to their military buddies, right? And having people around them who have same experiences, people they can talk to, et cetera, that maybe they can't talk to their friends, family, even counselors, right? And that's a big, huge aspect of people who serve and then come back into community life is having that camaraderie and relationship with people who have the same background and experiences they have, right?
Yeah, and that's a very, that's pretty well on cue. Boy, I tell you what, your stuff as regards to that. Peer-to-peer support. Our friends at Warriors for Freedom do this each and every day. What we've learned, just for the listeners to know, is that we've learned that, when you connect a service member with another service member, and you see a service member that's successful, that, another service member, if they're the right service member for that type of actionable item, they'll look at themselves and say, hey, listen, I want to be like that.
Yeah.
And not necessarily be like the person, but be like the person that has employment, is doing well, thriving, can handle and take care of their mental health. Because all of those things are things that, we struggle with. But in America, I think everybody struggles with something.
For sure. In different ways, of course.
Yes, right? But you know what? In the military, I think the peer-to-peer connection and the peer-to-peer support opportunities. We're getting ready to go do a hunting event on Tuesday and Wednesday, and I get an opportunity to go hunt up there near Enid, Oklahoma. And the thing about it is these veterans are going to come in. They are not what they're expecting is not even what they're going to think they're going to be expecting. And the reason I say it that way is because when they get there, what we try to do is wrap around a major donor or a major corporate citizen and to tell them, hey, listen, you know what? If you need employment, if you need connection, and if you just need someone to talk to, this is your person.
Right.
And I think what happens is, and I'm going to give you an example because I just saw him at the airport. I flew in today, and I saw him at the airport, a guy named Ray Carter. And Ray Carter runs a group called BG Products. If you put anything in your fuel tank,
yeah.
BG Products, a great supporter of ours. And the reason I'm bringing him up because his work that he's done to support veterans and to sit on the boards and to work with our veteran community is so powerful. He actually is walking that and talking and making sure that the connections are happening. And I say that because at BG Products, the reason you need to go buy BG Products is because they employ veterans. Ray Carter is supporting our veterans through his philanthropy efforts. And then the other thing, too, is that he understands that at the end of the day, when we take care of a veteran, we are actually doing our part in wearing that uniform.
Right, being a corporate citizen.
That's right.
So that's being a positive corporate citizen right there. He's not just putting in his money, but his time personally and personally investing, right?
Yeah, and Ray Carter is exactly that. And so to all of the people out there that are listening, because, hey, you know what? We want you to engage in this podcast now. And at some point in the future, people can ask me questions about different things. I've learned a lot about being in the military space, but one of the things that I've talked to Ray Carter about, because he asked me this question, and this was a very powerful question. He says, what's the signature wound of the war that you're seeing today? And I have to tell you, it's traumatic brain injuries.
Right.
And when someone hits their head on the ground and they get a sort of like a mild concussion, they may not even know that they've rattled their head. And you've been in that position where you kind of rattle your head, you hit yourself on a wall, and you're kind of like disoriented a little bit. That the more you hit your head like that, the more you cause trauma to that brain. And one of the things that Ray Carter has learned is that, you know what, I need to educate myself as a corporate citizen about the needs of our returning veterans. And he told me just recently, he said, you know what, this traumatic brain injury is an issue, and we've got to tackle it, and we got to make sure that, you know what, our veterans have the support that they need when they come back home so that, you know what, they can be successful in life.
It's a physical issue. Obviously, it affects their mental health. The more we learn about traumatic brain injuries, now even goes into reintegration into society. Some places now even have veteran courts and veteran programs specifically because of the difference that happens in individuals when they have TBIs, right?
Yeah, and you know, there's an organization here called North Care Mental Health Center, a great organization. I tell you what, they are the leader in our city of Oklahoma City on what they are doing for not only the mental health sector, but people that have mental illness, because that's a huge issue in our community. And I think that's an issue that I think we can wrap our hands around, you know, with the cutting of dollars to those kind of institutions. What you find is that people act up in the community, and then they wonder why they act up. Well, they're not on their medications. They're not on the things that they need, the support systems that they have that need to thrive and be successful. And so people like North Care and my friend Randy over there, man, he does an outstanding job, and they're trying to leverage dollars to bring into this community so that they can tackle the issues with traumatic brain injuries and mental health and other things.
Because it's not a visible wound, right?
Correct.
You could see, obviously, when you're wearing shorts and you have the prosthetic, people could understand that you have an injury, and they see the Purple Heart on your chest. They have a pretty good idea of where this all happened, how it came, but you can't look at someone and say, oh, I see you have a brain injury, or I see you have mental health issues affected by your service or something else related to an injury, right?
Correct. And I think the main component of what you just said is that identification, therapeutic process, and then the big one is really at the beginning, intervention.
Right.
Because what you don't want is these veterans to go down the road and end up in veterans court, or end up committing suicide, or end up hurting someone in their family unit. And I think what we're finding is that if we can save a life by creating, as Dan Strong at the Homeless Alliance always said, you know what, creating a safety net for our community. And I think that's what groups like North Care are doing. And there's other groups out there in this community that are doing that. I just attended an event, a powerful event with the Department of Veterans Affairs, and my good friends there that work there. You know, they're not about just giving you the license to go hunt or naming a bridge anymore. Right. And I hate to say it that way, but that used to be their mission requirements. Now they're actually doing stuff to provide mental, physical, and wellness. And I think those three words right there for the listener is the mental health. We know what that is.
Sure.
The physical, you could see. I've got physical wounds that I deal with. But the third one is the wellness. And that wellness to me comes from the right foods that they eat, the right community connections.
Sleeping well.
That sleeping well, having good faith.
Right.
And whether you believe in the good Lord or you believe in whatever, at least have something that guides you each and every day in a positive way. And then also just good interaction with people that are going to be there for you. And that's why a lot of people don't understand when you go to the VA hospital, it's like actually a reunion for a lot of people.
And that goes back to the camaraderie issue, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's what you mentioned.
Yeah.
And I think people do not understand that. And that's why that hospital setting works. Is it my preference? No, because my preference is I want to get in and out.
Right. Because you're a busy guy.
A busy guy, but for someone like I am, but for other people, that's a place for them to connect and to just drink some coffee and maybe find out about what's going on within the service structure. And you know what? At the end of the day, like you started out, having that peer-to-peer, having that connection, and then also just making sure that people know that, you know what, somebody cares about them.
Something else interesting about traumatic brain injuries is people think of traumatic brain injury as like literally you got to get smashed in the head or you got to fall really far, right? But it can happen, maybe even not even taking a direct hit to the brain, right? Because of percussive elements like the explosion that you were in and some other, so many of our servicemen and women have been in percussive incidents where they get rattled around as opposed to maybe an impact, and it definitely affects their brain again in that
It does. And you know what? I've got to tell you, that's a true statement because I'm working now with some folks with the NFL on traumatic brain injuries, and we're finding as we see a stimulated brain and a non-stimulated brain. Now, think about this. When you're playing football or in the military, your stimulation goes to the highest of levels.
Sure, every day, right?
Every day. And then all of a sudden they tell you, hey, on behalf of a grateful nation, it's time for you to go home. Or on behalf of the NFL Players Association, you know what? Hey, you're now being taken care of by us. And thanks for the 7 years that you gave. And for, take an Adrian Peterson or someone of that nature who's now, in his 30s, mid-30s, and he's playing football, and he's still trying to do it.
He's still running people over.
Well, and he's, I think he's 5th or 6th on the list.
I think he's about to be 5th,
of rushing. And the thing about that is that think about how hard he has to work with the older you get to be at that peak position. My point is that sometimes we say these things about athletes and about how much they get paid, but if you really look at the wear and tear and everything that goes along with it, how much is your body worth?
Right. Well, and then ultimately we find out, and typically find out much later in life. I think Junior Seau is a good example of someone who, when he was playing, was top of his game. Everyone knew his name. He was well respected, retired, seemed to be living the good life. Everything was fine until he took his own life and donated his brain to science because he knew that the damage he had taken in the trenches of the NFL had put him in that place mentally.
Yeah, and what we're also seeing is that from the wiring standpoint of the brain, something went different that day. Something triggered a negative response. And suicide is not the answer. But
never.
But to tell you that I can sit here and tell you that it's not crossed my mind in the sense of the things that I've gone through after hitting a bomb and thinking and feeling hopeless, you know what, I would be dishonest. And to everybody out there, you know what, all of us have thought about it, but there are some people that will take it upon themselves to do it. And that, to me, is the people you have to watch. Those are the people that are not just blowing smoke. Those are the people that are actually going to do something and do damage, not only to themselves, but maybe someone else.
Potentially.
And there was just a story out this week of a family in the veteran community where the father took his life, but before he did that, he took his wife and then his daughter. And man, that's a sad story, and that's why we have to educate the general public on the importance of making sure no one gets left behind.
And we have to cover all those areas, right? Mental health, physical health, and well-being.
Correct.
So all these things come together, including, again, back to camaraderie and human relationships and all of the things that go into positive mental health, right?
Yes.
Including things like what you've been doing with golf tournaments, music concerts, hunting adventures, everything like that. Tell everyone, you just had a golf tournament.
Yes, and you know what? Our golf tournament did great. We actually raised about $50,000 for the Folds of Honor.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we always talk about, honoring that sacrifice, educating the legacy. The cool thing about it is we had a great opening ceremony. We had a concert. Our friend Super Freak got dressed all up.
I like those guys. They're cool.
Aren't they cool?
Yeah.
You know, and I love the 80s music, you know, and it was funny because 2 nights ago I was at home watching Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and I'm thinking, is that how we were back then? You know, but so much has evolved with just the technology advancements and all of that. But the thing for us is that when we do these golf tournaments, it's about trying to honor our country, trying to honor the patriotic spirit of who we are, and then doing a good deed. Right. And as I always say in my book, you know, my pledge is to perform great deeds, because when you perform great deeds, you know and understand that deep inside your heart, it makes you feel good. And I think that's what philanthropy does.
For sure. And one of the things I find it's always advantageous when you can do multiple things at once. When you could put a bunch of, in this case, like a bunch of veterans together to have community and camaraderie, and raise some money, and do some things in your community, and be an example for people to see and say, look what they're doing, let's go do something. Or like all of these things snowballs into goodness, right?
Goodness, and that's a great word. And the thing about goodness is that these veterans can connect, and then they can come out and play golf. Some of them are really talented, and they've used golf for recovery.
Right.
And I got to tell you, that's what I love about sport. And the last 3 months for me, and even after we did our first podcast, and to all of the listeners out there, our podcast is about education, about support, about connection and opportunity. And it's about, you know what, real things that are going on in America and the positiveness of the things that we do. Now, there'll be some times where something, you know, that doesn't look right. And guess what? You got to call it out, you know. And when, you know, we have negative things going on within our political arena and the strife that we have, that this podcast is about bringing people together. And I'm the first one to call out these politicians on both sides of the aisle. You know what? They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing in Washington. And you know what? If you're listening, you better get on it, because I tell you what, we the people deserve better than what we get today. And the reason we deserve better is because when we are at our fullest peak, instead of thinking who's president, who's running Congress, when we're at our fullest peak, man, we can't be stopped. We're the most innovative, creative group of people in the world. And everybody says that your math scores are low. Yeah, you know what? That may be true compared to other countries, but our social skills aren't.
We're doing great things.
Yeah, we are one of the best group of people when it comes to social skills. And let me tell you why. Why does everybody want to come to the United States of America?
Oh, the greatest place on earth. The land of opportunity.
Look what we're doing. A podcast. Opportunity. Now, you can do one in India, too. But you know what? You're not going to have the podcast like we're going to have.
That's right.
And the capabilities and the creative nature and the industry that you work with.
And we have the freedom to say when we're not happy about our government. A lot of people around the world cannot say when they're unhappy about their government.
Exactly. You know what? The NBA sure went through that.
They learned that.
And just to go, you know, let's just switch gears on that, because I do have a story. I love what Shaq said.
Yeah.
And what Shaq said is like, listen, we do business with these people. Yeah. We know what the expectations are. We know that they are a communist country in China, yet we still do business with them. So was it negative what the individual for the Houston Rockets said, the general manager? I didn't think so, and let me tell you why. Because that's the freedom that we have.
That's right.
When Colin Kaepernick decided he wanted to kneel, guess what?
You have the freedom to do it.
He has the freedom to do it, and we have the freedom to call him out.
It's 100% legal. Nothing's happening to him. Whether people agree with him or not, they'll line up behind him or on the other side.
Yeah, and that's what I tell people.
That's freedom.
And I'm the one that fought for Colin Kaepernick. And now, you know, those people being rebels and saying, guess what? Yeah. We're not going to stand for what China's doing in Hong Kong.
They want freedom in Hong Kong, yeah.
But you know what? Hong Kong was always under British rule, too.
So they do have a different... They're not like people who grew up in mainland China who has understood the communist rule their whole lives.
Yeah.
But what is amazing for me as an American citizen is that when these people in Hong Kong go to protest for freedom, they're carrying American flags.
Correct.
The symbol of freedom.
Well, and the symbol of freedom is if you really look at how many people have done business in Hong Kong, look, I've known people that have been there, and the cost of real estate and the cost of living there is so over the top. And when you start getting a different change of government, and they start saying, hey, listen, you owe us a lot more money than what you're going to make, that becomes an issue. And that's where in America we have to look. Some people in this country think socialism is the way to go. I will tell you in a minute, that is not me.
Heck no.
I don't want to be like Venezuela.
Nope.
My dad is down there in Colombia right now doing work, mission work. He's seen firsthand the people, the refugees
leaving Venezuela,
leaving Venezuela to come to Colombia to try to start a new life and have nothing.
Yeah.
And they're building them houses just to try to support them. And not to be in the political realm, but in America, you shouldn't get everything for free. There should be some sweat equity.
Yeah, you got to earn some things, right? You got to have respect for it by earning it.
The Golden Group has to go out and give business. Yeah. Otherwise, it doesn't survive.
That's right. We have to take risk every single day.
Risk, and there's monetary value in what you have to have. You have to be able to give your message. If anybody's out there looking for a bad to the bone marketing group, my good friends at the Golden Group will take care of you. But it's not just about that. It's about also, like my insurance guy, Phil Good, big plug for him. The reason I went with him instead of USA is because he's next door.
Yeah, right.
And that, to me, is why we have a great relationship.
Sure.
We're together. We know each other. We're going to go to bat. And if you have a problem and you say, hey, Ed, help me out, I'm going to be there for you. And I think, to me, that is kind of what these countries overseas are wanting, too. And when you have a communist regime like China that has taken advantage of their people, and I will admit it, you got to call it out.
Yeah.
And you can't let it go.
Yeah.
And I think the strategy behind that is the NBA will be better if they stand up for what's right.
And I think they're learning a lot. They're learning a hard lesson from that for sure. For sure.
Isn't that an example of like needing a good marketing group to message you very well?
Well, there's definitely some PR lessons from NBA in China for
think?
sure. We're talking about it on my business podcast already.
Did?
Yeah, about the NBA, probably something that no one would have even noticed. They'd have let it go. But then they blew themselves up on all this PR issue by trying to make it go away. It's like, just let it happen. Let people have their opinion and go on, right? That's
Correct.
usually the right answer when it comes to PR is let your employees have their opinion and just move on down the road.
Well, unless you're Tiger Woods, and you may need to come out and just kind of like, hey, listen, I was bad and did what I did, and maybe just take the heat, But that's another, and they're studying these kind of things in college.
Yeah.
My daughter was telling me about it, that these current events, they talked about the issue in college about at the University of Oklahoma about the fact that what could have been done differently by the NBA in that realm.
Well, because we talked earlier about there's potential for failure and things. The thing about for failing or not succeeding is there's always lessons to learn from it. So that blip in the NBA's history, if they learn some lessons from it and they move forward in a great way, it'll be fine. If they don't learn the lessons, they make the same mistake over and over again. That's where real failure happens.
Well, and I'm going to give you a viewpoint because I know that you do a lot in the aid space. Commend you on all that hard work. I was good friends with Mr. Jackie Cooper.
Right.
And the only reason I'm bringing this up is because one of the things that the military wasn't ready for was, they had the don't ask, don't tell. I've even evolved in all of this. Let me tell you, I've evolved in the sense that I've learned, like, if someone wants to serve their country in uniform, they should have that opportunity to do that as long as they're able to meet all of the standards and as long as they're able to do what they're doing. And one of the things that I'm seeing with the military, going back to that piece, because it is a current event, is that the military is in its own transition, its own cultural shift
sure, right.
Of how it used to be. One example, I'll even give you a small, minute example to everybody that's out there. We used to shine our boots. You don't shine your boots anymore.
Oh,
now,
really?
you may shine your shoes, but in the old days, you shined your boots. Now you have these rough terrain, all-weather boots.
It's a just different scenario.
Different scenario. But the thing when you shined your boots is that you were connected to all of your service members because sometimes you all got together and shined your boots, and it was kind of what they call NCO call or officers call, and everybody just gathered around the barracks area and talked and kind of assessed everybody. That cultural shift has changed.
Right.
Cultural shift as it relates to what someone feels, if you love one person over another or you like the same all of that's a cultural shift.
Sure.
And the thing about it is that I don't think the military was prepared for the way that the new military operates, because I'm going to tell you why they weren't prepared. because right now the suicide rate is over the roof.
Yeah, it's bad.
And it's not just necessarily people that went to combat. It's people in everyday life that are having issues. There's a lot of bullying that occurs, not in the military, because there is some of that, but outside of the military.
Right.
And when they go into the military, they come with these stressors and these issues, and all of a sudden you take people to the next level, and economics plays a role, divorce, relationships, all of these things. And I tell people, you know what, we have a bigger problem in America, and that is that we're not looking out after each other like we should.
Right. Is that number still 22 veterans a day that we're losing?
It's down to 20 the other day at the event that I was at the University of Oklahoma. The Department of Veterans Affairs, that is what I didn't say. They brought all these people together all over the state to talk about all of the different issues that are going on and how all these organizations can better serve our veterans. And to hear that, now we're losing 20 people as opposed to 22, we put a dent in it. The problem with that, though, is that those numbers, what are the real numbers?
Right.
Because there's a lot of variance on those numbers. And the thing about it is that right now, on active duty, we're losing more active duty personnel than we're losing outside of just a regular. So my point to that, and what I mean by that is just, when 1 or 2 active duty people kill themselves a month, that's a high number.
For sure.
For one of the, yeah. And what we were also finding is that the Vietnam veterans were the ones, a lot of them were committing suicide during these years. And now we're seeing those trends start to change somewhat, because most of the people that were in those suicide risk areas were people that were living in some negative situations. Right. And we have them here at the Homeless Alliance. When Dan does this veteran stand down, predominantly you're going to see Vietnam veterans that are in that space. The other group of veterans, Korean older veterans, World War II veterans, people are, they're going out.
Yeah.
But the Korean veterans are also going out too. And one of the things about that is living older and just feeling hopeless and not having any family unit around. And that's just an issue.
That's a lot of topics that we covered, but they all kind of come back to the central idea, right? We started off talking about sports and camaraderie and teamwork. Your military service is tied to teamwork and to camaraderie there. Talking about society as a whole, how we help each other, how we benefit each other, how being good citizens, whether we're in the service or a civilian, but when we help each other out, we create something better for all of us. Teamwork again.
That's right.
Business teamwork. Everything comes back to these ideas, right? That if we help our neighbor, if we're a good neighbor and we help our neighbor and we all work together to make things better, we can, if we're willing to work together.
Well, and that's that word perseverance. It's not the size of the dog in the fight; it's the size of the dog in the fight. You know what I mean? It's like, and you don't have to be the big dog in the pen to be a difference maker. And I think that's what I think we find. And these are a lot of topics, and I want people to know that will listen that the way you and I communicate on these issues is that we may be all over the place, but it all comes back to the central point of what I learned in the military, which was those principles: leadership, loyalty, honor, duty, country, and love for others, and resiliency, and also integrity and values. And all of those things are not just words to me. They're words that you have to live by with purpose. Yep. And that, to me, is what this podcast is all about, is that all of these events going on around us do affect us in some way. And they need to be discussed. And you know what? Our opinion is our opinion. Right. But guess what? Our opinion is probably going to be on the right side of the cause of freedom.
But what's most important is having the conversation.
Correct.
We're starting the conversation. We hope everyone listening to the podcast, or they caught the video online, are having conversations with their family members, their coworkers. They decide to come volunteer or donate to any of the organizations that are doing their support work. Maybe even they want to join up, and play a role themselves, their church, etc. We just want to start the conversation and let people take it on a little bit further.
Well, yeah, and take it further. And I like what you just said. And this is what taking it further is all about. I just told you that I have evolved in my life.
Right.
And I remember the years in the 80s and then the 90s. And what I dislike about our politics is that whatever you thought about in 1990, now you're supposed to think today.
Right.
And that's not how it works.
That's not how people
evolve.
are, right?
No.
Yeah.
And normal people evolve. And so from a politician standpoint, it'd be refreshing to say, you know what, in 1990, that's how I believed. But today I can't believe that.
Yeah.
And I've evolved. And guess what?
It's okay to admit that.
It is okay to admit it. I hear these people like, well, this is what I said back then, and this is what I meant by it. No, you didn't mean it by it. You meant what you meant because it was 1990.
Yeah.
In 2000. Now we're in 2019, and things are totally different.
And pretty soon it'll be 2020.
Yeah. And that's why I say I've evolved in the sense that I just had someone that I know that literally, from a military standpoint, asked me if it would be a wise decision to join the military. And they, of course, it was a gay young man. And you know what he told me? I told him? I said, young man, if you want to serve your country, you go for it.
Yes.
And the thing about it is that's what I'm talking about as we evolve is that, and I'm bringing this up because I know you do a lot of work, you and your wife, on something that's really a very special thing, and that is to take care of people. Doesn't matter what people have or what disease or whatever. We are here to help people. Yes. And for me to say that to that young man, one of the things that he came back, he's like, wow, I didn't think I would expect that answer. And I'm like, because I told him, I said, no, it'll be a good career for you. It's different than it was when I was going through.
Right.
And now a lot of that is about if you want to serve your country and you want to be openly gay to be able to do it, you know what? All of us evolved to that position.
Yeah.
And that is what the law is.
That's right.
When I lived under the law, under the Clinton administration, it was a don't ask, don't tell. And the thing about it, that's a total different thing.
And there's still going to be some people who say, well, I personally disagree. I would have told him the exact opposite of what Major Ed said. That's fine. You're entitled to your opinion, but that young man has to live his life. And so you told him, go live your life.
Go live your life, and you know what? Serve your country. Yeah. I'm not here. Yeah. I'm not the judge of anybody.
Hey, well, this country needs good people serving.
And that's right. And the respectful thing is that we are looking at it from a different spectrum today than we did years ago.
For sure.
And the thing about it is I'm not in the military anymore. Now, I could tell you how some of the old timers would say about some things like that, or how to wear the uniform, or how to shine your boots today, or how to, have your hair cut. It's totally different. Right. But for me to dictate the terms of someone's service to our country, right, who truly meets the requirements,
and they're willing to put their butt on the line,
then guess what? You know what? More power to you.
Right.
Because I'm sitting at the house on the couch now.
So we need good people on the front lines.
And that was something that came about this week that I had the opportunity. And another thing that happened this week is that I had an opportunity to tell someone that is retiring that they needed to go get their Veterans Administration benefits. And as much as they said, oh, I don't need it, I'm not the type of person that will take any handouts and all of this. My thing is like, this is not a handout.
You've earned it.
You earned it.
Right.
Go get your VA benefits. Go get checked up, because here's what's going to happen. And I told them, I said, what may happen is you may end up with some type of terminal illness that you didn't know about in the water or whatever that you drank, or being in the combat zone, and you didn't go get the support. Now you're backpedaling, because now you have to go through the back end to get your benefits. Do it now, make it happen, and guess what? Live a prosperous life. That's all we ask you to do.
Go. Thank you, Major Ed, for another amazing conversation. I love every time we get together and talk. I definitely love doing this podcast with you. It's a great honor for me and a privilege. It's Veterans Day weekend. Monday is Veterans Day. The day we're going to release this episode today, Veterans Day. I'm going to start by shaking your hand and congratulations and thanking you.
Thank you, brother,
for your service. Of course, we appreciate all the work, all the veterans and their family, the sacrifices their families make, everyone who's put on a uniform in the military, our first responders, of course, as well, in the civilian services. We always love having these conversations. We stirred up a bunch of stuff today. We started on sports. We ended at a completely different place. That's the great thing about this conversation in this podcast. Thank you so much for spending your time expressing your opinion. We're willing to take the heat if people like it or they don't. And I'm looking forward to our next episode of the Major Ed Pulido Warrior for Freedom podcast. Until then, I say have a great Veterans Day.
Hoorah!